Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to see people here, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on the waiting room so I can let people in if needed. But I am Kristen Stuppy. I am the one who sends out all the messages and does all the stuff behind the scenes. But I am excited to welcome Becky Bowe back. I will introduce her in a minute to let a few more people come into the waiting room if needed. But you should be able to see my screen. Hopefully, when you signed up, you saw that everyone has to now agree to the CHAD participation agreement. It is long, and this is a summary, and it's already got too much. But if you just remember that you're supposed to be kind, that you are supposed to be inclusive, that you are not supposed to share any personal private information that you learn at any of our events. Don't take pictures. All right. And then I usually do this at the end, but it's just easier while I have the screen. All of our upcoming things, if you enjoy tonight. Next month's parent talk is creating a blueprint for a successful semester for high school students. So very similar to this, but a different speaker with a different agenda. He has a coaching background, whereas we'll talk about Becky's background here in a moment, but very different backgrounds. So probably some different information in each. So I hope that you guys can join us then. And then in February, I'm really excited. A local physician, Dr. Natasha Berger, will be joining us to talk about Worried and Wiggly, how anxiety and ADHD travel hand in hand. And then, of course, our other groups are on here as well. If you want to join any of those, you can visit the website event page to see more about all of that. Again, I am super thrilled to welcome back a familiar face, Becky Bowe. If you joined us last time when she walked us through building structures to help our kids develop independence, her insights were practical and immediately usable, exactly the kind of stuff that everybody wants to have. And she returns tonight to take us a step further, kind of focusing on executive function skills in teens and tweens. And as our kids move into more complex academic, social, and emotional territory, these skills are going to be essential. And especially for the neurodivergent learners, they don't come easily. So Becky's expertise is what we need to navigate this stage with confidence, clarity, and help our kids. And for those of you who are joining for the first time, a little bit about Becky. She's the director of Fit Learning, KC, where she applies the science of learning to teach core foundational skills to learners of all ages and abilities. And with more than a decade of experience as a behavior analyst, she brings knowledge in autism spectrum disorders, developmental disabilities, positive behavior support, and applied behavioral analysis. Her mission is one that aligns beautifully with ours at ADHDKC, empowering families and educators with tools that truly make a difference. She's passionate about precision teaching, data-driven approach that allows her to monitor and optimize each learner's progress with accuracy. We're grateful to have her back with us tonight. I'm excited for these practical strategies, encouragement, and clarity that she brings. She has said that she's welcome to take questions immediately if they were kind of pertain exactly to what is on the slide and what she's talking about. But if it is an individualized question, please don't bring too much personal information to a situation. Ask broad questions, and some of those you can save for the end, or you can put them in the chat box so that you don't forget, and then I'll make sure that she sees it. So with no further ado, welcome, Becky.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kristen. I'm excited to be back. I really enjoyed presenting last time when I got to talk about scaffolding strategies for learners of all ages, really. And it was fun to kind of revamp that presentation that I gave a couple months ago to more specifically target teens and tweens. And so some of what you hear may be a little bit, if you were here last time, maybe a little bit of a repetition, but it also deviates quite a bit and gets more specific and more specifically focused on our older kids. And so I'm going to take just a second to share my slides. Yeah, perfect. All right, so we are going to dive into executive function tips for teens and tweens. This is really a guide for parents and caregivers. So hopefully, as Kristen said, you're able to walk away this evening with some strategies that you may be able to implement as quickly as tomorrow. Some may take a little bit longer to kind of plan out and personalize specifically for your family. But my objective, I always appreciate attending a presentation or a talk where I feel like I'm ready to try something new afterwards. And so that's what I hope to leave you with. In my role at Fit Learning KC, we're really honed in on building independence one skill at a time. And so we have become quite adept at taking a large skill set and breaking it down into step-by-step bites that really allow our learners of all ages, all the way from 4 to my age. I've had a colleague of mine, so mid 40s, enroll with me not that long ago. But we take complex systems and structures and make them manageable. So of course, in that age range, we've got teens and tweens that we are working with. A lot of what builds success for our learners here at Fit Learning is building structured routines so they know what to expect. And we pair that with a lot of positive reinforcement. And so just because we've built an effective routine and we have an effective expectation or a structure in place doesn't mean that our kids know how to use it on day one. We have to teach them how to effectively follow the routines and expectations that we have just within the confines of a Fit Learning session, which is only 50 minutes out of the day. So I've got it really easy. I've got it brilliantly easy, because really the only open-ended time that a learner has when they're here is right when they get here, and then again right at the end of a session when they're wrapping up their materials, they're putting things away and closing out various parts of the session. We have to teach them how to do those parts effectively and independently. You guys as parents and caregivers, you've got like a lot more hours than that you have to account for, and that you have to be thinking about how to scaffold and support. So the hill you're climbing is a lot steeper than the one that I'm climbing here. So it's important to know that we're looking at really, really big complex structures and thinking about bite-sized ways to kind of tackle that beast. So hopefully tonight is about making your life a little bit easier and your teen's world a little bit more manageable. It's really important to know, as we're moving through the rest of my slides, that just because your teen or tween has been exposed to the systems that work for you and that work for your home does not mean they've effectively learned how to use those systems themselves. And so I think a lot of times it's really easy to have the expectation that, well, this is the way we do it all the time. And so why can't my kid be successful with that? Because there's a big mismatch, especially for our kids with ADHD, between exposure and true learning and really knowing how to execute or work through a structure. It's really important to keep in mind that executive function, that whole executive function skill set, which can consist of lots and lots and lots of different skill structures, is a skill set that's to be built. It's when our kids when they demonstrate executive dysfunction, when they're not able to engage in the executive functioning skills that we'll work through this evening, it's really important to keep in mind that that's not a personality flaw or a failure. It's a learning opportunity. It's a chance to develop a new skill set that's effective for that individual. ADHD, as I'm sure all of you are well aware, isn't about knowing what to do. It's about being able to do it at the right time and in the right way. Executive functioning includes planning and prioritizing. It includes task initiation and working memory, time awareness, being able to self-monitor, and then being able to keep your individual space and the surrounding areas that you function in organized and workable for you. It's kind of like the air traffic control system of the brain. And so or the CPU of the computer. It's responsible for absolutely everything that gets us through a day, from the time we get up in the morning all the way till we go to bed at night. And a lot of times today's executive functioning needs impact tomorrow's outcomes. And so we'll talk a lot about kind of planning for future you. So a lot of what you might encounter during the day can center around task initiation, getting started with things, being able to follow multi-step instructions or complex instructions, being able to manage time and remember everything that needs to be included in a routine or a part of the day. And again, I want to reiterate that these struggles, when your teen or tween is struggling with skills like this, it's not a character flaw, it's a skill deficit. Sometimes what this could look like for an older child is that they get out their homework planner or their whatever system they're using to keep track of assignments or tasks that need to be completed today, and they just don't know where to begin. So they've got it captured, and maybe they've only got it partially captured, but they really don't know what to start with or where to prioritize time and effort and energy. They may hear an instruction to get ready for soccer practice, but they can't get they can't effectively transition away from the homework that it took them 20 minutes or 50 minutes or an hour and a half to get started, to even get started on. And once they do transition away from that activity that they're currently engaged in, maybe they can't find their soccer cleat, or they vaguely remember putting their shin guards in a safe place, but they have no idea where that safe place is today. All of that matches with executive dysfunction. Just like when I presented previously, we're going to go through this 3-step support cycle, but we're adapting it now to meet teen needs instead of younger kids' needs. So we're going to look at a bunch of different supports, and we're going to look at this 3-step cycle of building a structure, providing support within that structure, and then fading that support so that your teen or tween can depend on that structure in a way that's effective for them to be independent and self-reliant. So when we talk about structures, I'm talking about being able to set up the environment or provide tools that reduce friction. And some things that teens may use could include checklists, having launch pads, which we'll get into here in just a bit, setting timers for themselves on their phones or wherever. The support within those structures. So it's not enough to just build the structure. We've got to support our kids in effectively using those structures. And that simply means that we're providing help within the moment when they need to use that structure without taking over. So we're not doing it for them. We're not, we might be modeling how to effectively use that structure. We might be using that structure right along with them side by side so that they can see how we use it in our lives, in our day-to-day lives. But we're not taking over and doing the routine or the activity for them. And then we can provide some prompting along the way. So maybe verbal or visual reminders that help them learn to rely on the structure instead of, or the structure that we've built instead of us serving as the cue to move on to the next step or whatever. And then once the structure has been built and over time it's probably been tweaked a few times, it's been adapted, you've figured out that this particular structure works for this particular set of needs, but maybe not in a different situation. So structures are not going to be golden on day one. They definitely have to be refined and tweaked and reworked. But we've got that structure built, we've put support in place, and with time and practice and repeated exposure, we're going to be able to step back as our teen begins to develop and build skills toward independence, which is ultimately the goal that we want. We want them to rely independently on those structures and supports. The goal is never to get away from the structures. The goal is to teach our teens to use the structures effectively the way that works for them. If I think about, I use an app called Todoist. And I've joked recently, and I'm starting to think that I should not be joking about this. If Todoist went away, I wouldn't know how to function tomorrow. I would know what my schedule is because my schedule is someplace else, but I would have absolutely no concept of what the structure of my day needs to look like. I live inside that app. The goal is never, ever, ever for me to walk through my day without depending on the structure that Todoist provides. And it's not our goal. That's not our goal for our teens either. The goal, again, is to teach them to effectively use these structures. So we want to reduce reminders. We want to allow autonomy. And sometimes that looks like letting our kids mess up, which I'm not a mom. I probably should have put that disclaimer out there right at the beginning of this. I work really closely with moms. I've got very, very close to my family, and my sisters are both moms and their kids have grandkids. So I'm around moms a lot. It's hard to watch our kids walk into a situation when maybe they didn't use the structure that we had put in place. And that means they're going to show up at soccer practice without their cleats today. And when that happens once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, those are all learning opportunities for like, okay, what can we go back to the structure? How can we go back to that and better build a system that can be effective so that this does not keep happening? It's important to know that, not every day will require the same level of support. And so you may have made it down to this fade phase of this three-step support cycle where you're beginning to pull away from the level of support that you've had to provide previously. And all of a sudden your teen erupts over needing a reminder to brush their teeth. The structure that was in place for the evening routine may not have worked effectively for whatever rhyme or reason today. And then they erupt because you're nagging them, right? Or you're telling them what to do and they don't want to be told what to do. But really, that doesn't mean that the system has failed you. It means that today's CPU, today's brain needs better structure or more support than it did yesterday. And that's okay. We have to expect those fluctuations. Fading our supports is dynamic. It is definitely not a one-way street. So as we think about executive functioning, it's a skill deficit. Just getting through the day is really challenging for all of us, first of all, but particularly our teens with ADHD. We know that they can't hold all the pieces in working memory, and that's not about being lazy. It's all about a skill deficit. So maybe we run into a situation where today's homework assignment is partially completed. It's crumpled. Maybe there's spilled chocolate milk on it from breakfast this morning. It's definitely not in a backpack. It's not on a desk. I think it's easy to look at that situation and possibly lean into the idea that my kid's lazy or my kid just can't do this X, Y, or Z. It's a skill deficit. There are skills that we can teach that can overcome or help support and provide structure to that particular routine. Maybe this afternoon's soccer uniform, so got a game after school today, and maybe the uniform is still in the pile of dirty clothes that's taking over the corner of the bedroom. Some things, and we can't solve today's problem, that's for sure. So we're not aiming to solve the dirty uniform problem for today. We're aiming to solve the dirty uniform problem for next time. We want to get ahead of that. And a structure or a couple structures that we could put in place look like a daily checklist. So maybe at the end of each day, and I'll tap into this structure quite a bit as we move through the evening. Maybe at the end of the day, you and your teen co-create a checklist for tomorrow. What do I need to get through the day successfully tomorrow? So I'm going to look at my Wednesday schedule. I'm going to see all the different classes that I have, all the appointments that I have, all the extra activities that I've got on my schedule. And I'm going to identify the different things that I need to be effective. As much as you can, you want your teen coming up with those ideas. So if there's a soccer game tomorrow after school, we want our teen to be the one that's throwing out, I need my cleats, I need my shin guards, I need my uniform, I need my away jersey, I need, all the things that you need. I've never played soccer in my life, so I don't really know what you might need, but that whole checklist of the things you need, we want them contributing to that as much as they can. But also, again, at the beginning of this, when you're first beginning to use this as a support or as a structure, you'll have to contribute to that too. And that's okay. That's plan for that. That's where you and your teen are co-creating this. The expectation is not that they do it on their own. The expectation is not that you do it on your own. So that you work together to come up with a checklist for tomorrow. Over time, as you kind of develop this habit, and this can take as few as 5 minutes. It does not have to be a huge cumbersome thing. Over time, as you get into the habit of practicing this, you'll notice that they begin to contribute more and you have to contribute less. And eventually you're going to hear them say, oh yeah, I've got library tomorrow, my library book's due. And you wouldn't have known that. So maybe you couldn't have contributed that anyway. Now you really know that this little micro routine that you build into the end of the day has a big impact on how they begin to plan and organize for the next day. We want to try to shift away from naggy language of like, well, go check, how many times do I have to tell you? I had to tell you that yesterday, and really get into just kind of contributing without judgment, right? Or without any expectation that like, yeah, I shouldn't have to be telling you this again and again and again. They have ADHD. You do have to tell them this again and again and again and again. But with practice and with consistency, they will start to latch on to the predictability and I mean, I can't tell you how many of our kids here, one of the checklist items at the end of your session is that you scoot your chair in at the end of the session. That's probably the thing in our wrap up checklist that takes the longest for almost all of our kids to master. But eventually, every single one of them, I can watch them walk away from the table and then kind of do some self-talk, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I gotta scoot my chair in. And they turn around, they scoot their chair in, they go back to doing what they were doing. And eventually that becomes a better kind of ingrained part of their routine. So it's not enough just to build a checklist and expect your teen to be able to use it. You got to teach them how to use it. So the next morning, now you've spent your 5 minutes this evening co-creating this checklist for tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, then we can't just expect that they're going to get out of bed and check their checklist. They're not, I promise. No teen is going to jump out of bed in the morning and think about last night's checklist. So we have to model what that looks like. And we have to make sure that maybe last night while you were creating the checklist, you created your own checklist for today too. So now you've got a checklist for the day, they've got a checklist for the day, and you're going to model in that morning routine what it looks like to check in with that checklist and get things checked off of your own checklist. Then they get to see that, hey, this isn't just a strategy that I have to use because I have ADHD and my brain doesn't function the way that I want it to consistently. This is a support that, like, most adults should probably use. I don't know. I couldn't get through a day if I didn't have a checklist of what I need to get done today. And when I try, inevitably, I miss things. So I definitely know better than to try to rely on the biggest lie I tell myself is I'll get that done tomorrow. If I don't write it down, I will not get that done tomorrow. And I'm a full-grown adult that doesn't struggle with all the executive dysfunction stuff that our teens with ADHD and probably teens in general kind of experience. I like the idea of giving our teens tools that don't set them apart and that don't make them look like they have to rely on something different just because they've got this label or this diagnosis. So a lot of my strategies, you'll notice, are things that I'm going to encourage you to use as well, so that you're showing them that, like, this is just how I get through my day too. But then along with that, if you've built today's checklist and now it's morning and you're going through your checklist before you head out the door, externalize your thoughts, how you would talk yourself through checking things off the checklist. So yeah, I needed to put the chicken out for dinner tonight. I got that done. Check. I needed to put this particular project back in my work bag. I did that. Check. So that they can begin to hear the monologue that you have with yourself, and they can adapt it to what their needs are as well. And again, that process could take as little as 5 minutes at the beginning of the day. And now all of a sudden we've got at least a little bit more organization going on. I want to check in. I've seen some action in the chat, but I'm not paying attention to the chat. And so is there anything? Okay, perfect. So always going back to this idea that, of course, the goal is independence, but the path to get there is co-regulation or co-creation. So use the tools with them before you expect to use them independently. And who knows, maybe you won't forget your lunch tomorrow on your way to the office. I don't know. If I have to bring my lunch to work tomorrow, I put my lunchbox out tonight, because otherwise I will walk off without my lunch time and time again. Another one of the strategies that we effectively use here at Fit Learning, but I also know families use things like this at home all the time, is setting up kind of zones or kind of landing launch pads or whatever for kind of a home base for where things go. And by creating the routine or the expectation and the habit of having clear zones, a lot of times that can result in fewer lost items. It can make the routines for leaving the house and returning back home a whole lot easier and more successful. So the structure that we're leaning into here is this idea of having dedicated zones. I immediately think of like a mud room where you get out of the car, walk through the garage, come into the house, and the first area that you're in might be kind of a really well designed area to hang your backpack up, hang your coat up, hang your purse up, put your shoes in the bin that's under your hook. Anything that you're going to need to take out of the house tomorrow can land right here in this zone. And it's the first thing that you see when you come in the house. And I understand not every house is built that way. Mine is not. I'm jealous of people that have this mudroom area. I don't have one, and it will be in my next house because I like the idea so much. And when that's the case, you have to build a different zone. You have to come up with a different structure that can work just as effectively. And again, just because that structure's there doesn't mean our teen or tween is going to independently use it on day one. They're probably not using it right now, which is why you're here. And so we have to teach them how to use it. We can't, just because it's there, doesn't mean it's going to get used effectively. So avoiding the morning school scramble really starts with maximizing and making the space work for you. So if an item does not belong in that zone, get it out. Find a new zone for it. Things kind of, if that becomes the junk drawer that we all have, mine's right here in my desk, where everything that you don't really have a home for gets piled, then that zone becomes very ineffective. It becomes harder to use instead of serving the purpose of making the morning routine and the evening routine easier. But again, you have to model using it yourself. And so you have to kind of have this expectation of, when I get out of the car, I take my backpack inside and I hang it on my hook. And then I take my outside shoes off and I immediately put my Uggs on. And when I left the house, I left my Uggs in the mudroom right there ready for me when I get back home. So they're where I want them to be when I come home. And talk through what you're doing. Again, model the language that you're using for yourself so that they can begin to develop that internal monologue of what the expectations are when they walk in the door. Let's see. So yeah, and the whole family, there should be an expectation that like this idea of having this zone for morning and evening transitions doesn't just pertain to our teen or tween with ADHD. It's something that we all can benefit from and use. And when the whole family is using it, it's more likely that our teen will adapt to it and begin to use it themselves. But it just becomes part of what the expectations of the house are. And so dad's briefcase can go in this landing zone. Your sister's softball bag can go there. And anything that's going to be part of those transitions in and out can land in these zones. But then you can also develop in your teen's bedroom. I love the idea of having a dedicated homework zone where nothing else goes in this space unless it is for schoolwork. So maybe the book they're reading for their book report, maybe the books they've checked out from the library for their science project, their homework folder for today. When you hang up the backpack in the mudroom, pull that homework folder out and it immediately goes into the homework zone so that it's exactly where it needs to be. But again, think about that 3-step cycle that we reviewed at the beginning. We've got the structure, we've got these zones built, we've got to provide support so that our teens can see us using them and learn how to use them themselves. And then we can fade the support so we're not prompting as much or as frequently. We don't have to give reminders. They begin to do it on their own. We definitely want to be able to shift away from constantly reminding our teens to use these structures, building prompts that kind of take over for us. And we can teach our teens to to set up their own prompting systems in a way. We don't want parents to have to be the reminder system all the time. We want that control or that structure to shift over to the system that we're building instead of again, being dependent on parent reminders. And this is effective because it helps our teens build ownership and independence. And it really can help our teens develop some time awareness. I know a lot of our kiddos really struggle with time blindness and getting really wrapped up in a particular interest or activity or whatever. And all of a sudden, we've probably all done this as well, where we hop on our phone for 5 minutes and then an hour later, it's like, oh, oops, what just happened with those 55 minutes that I completely lost? We might get drawn into a really good book. And, I hop in bed at 10:30 tonight and I'm reading and all of a sudden it's 12:30. I'm like, ew. didn't mean for that to happen. Maybe we get caught in the driveway going to get the mail, and we've had a 30-minute long conversation with the neighbor that we didn't really plan for. When we can, it's really helpful to start to teach our teens to set a timer for these types of, I like to think about timed versus untimed time management. So timed time management is kind of easy because it has a clear start and a clear end. So soccer practice is tonight from 5:30 to 6:30. There's really nothing to manage there with the time. There is, but it's a way different management of time than when we've got some open-ended time in front of us, and what do we do with that? So maybe we come home from soccer practice and it's 6:30, we've got to have dinner, we've got to get some homework done, we've got to read for the book that we're reading at school. I'd really like to play I'd like to play Roblox for a little bit. So how do I delegate that hour and a half or 2.5 hours that I've got before bed? How do I manage to get all of these things in there? I know for me, when I come home at the end of the day, and I think this is probably true for a lot of teens coming home from school, at the end of a day of high school, I think our teens probably deserve nothing more than to just get to kick back and not do anything for at least a few minutes. But that's hugely risky because obviously we run the risk of really falling into a rabbit hole of some kind and not knowing how to get back out or get back on track. So teach them to set a timer, help them learn to rely on a timer to say, I'm going to scroll TikTok for 20 minutes. When the timer goes off, that's my cue to get back on track. I do it for myself. I give myself permission to kind of zone out, to really not focus on anything. But I have to have a stopping point. And that's either me being really aware of giving myself a time limit, or me knowing what time the next thing starts. So this evening, for example, I had about an hour and a half to kill before starting this presentation. And so I set a timer and gave myself the goal of getting a couple work tasks done. But had I not set that timer for myself, I would have blown right past the 6:30 start time for this. I easily would have lost track of where I was with time. And it would have been very easy for me to miss being online at the right time. So, and again, with practice, our kids will begin to see how we manage that open-ended time in our day, but also learn to manage it for themselves. So ultimately, we want them to be able to identify how much time they've got to work with, how they need to allocate it, and then be able to set timers accordingly, or know how to check in with the clock consistently so that they're moving on to the next thing more independently as much as we can. Oh, I think my notes for this made it to the wrong page. Did they? So sorry. I'm gonna make sure okay, not yet. I'm a little bit lost. As much as we can, we want to plan to be able to predict and build transitions in advance. We know that transitions are really hard for the ADHD brain, but we also know that when we can prepare or plan or predict for an upcoming transition, it helps to stabilize emotional regulation, independence, and again, ownership. The objective would be then to decrease or reduce shutdowns and blowups and things like that. And again, this is all about being able to identify together at the top of the day what the different transitions are going to be throughout the day. And so it almost feels like sometimes the busier the day, the easier it is to get through because there's predictable transitions. We know that after school, we hop right in the car and come to fit learning. After fit learning, we go right to soccer practice. After soccer practice, we go right to dinner. After dinner, we've got 35 minutes of homework time, and then we've got to start the bedtime routine. And while that day feels really rushed and harried and overwhelming, that's almost an easier day to get through because there's not the open-ended time that you have to fill and have to figure out how to manage. But we also have those days too. We know that we need to teach that skill of that self-regulation and being able to know, okay, this evening I'm gonna have an hour and a half of time. Do I spend all of that time playing games on the computer, talking on the phone with a friend? Teens don't do that. texting on the phone with friends. What are the ways I could fill that time? And right now, what could I put in place to help myself transition away from that when I know that it's going to be hard this evening, when I want to stay drawn into the thing that I'm interested in or that I'm enjoying or just zoning out with. So it's easier, I think, when you're not drawn into that activity, to think about how to get out of it. So if you know that you're going to have an hour of computer time this evening from roughly 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, right now set an alarm for 8 o'clock this evening, so that current you can predict and think about what future you would benefit from. Let's see. I want to make sure that I am not. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to skip this slide real quick and come back to it because these two really go hand in hand a little bit. The previous slide that we talked about, this building transitions and then preloading decisions, those fit together a little bit better. So right along with being able to predict when transitions will occur during the day and being able to set up some structures like alarms and schedules or calendars or whatever. When we can teach our teens to make decisions in advance instead of right then when the decision has to be made, it's going to decrease decision fatigue. It's going to reduce overwhelm. It's going to help jumpstart task initiation. And so what that could look like is a weekly review, a daily review, from the perspective or the lens of what can current me or what can current you do to support tomorrow you or future you or Thursday you or whatever. And over time, we want that to shift from current you to current me. So they begin to internalize that dialogue that helps them make not even necessarily better decisions, but just decisions in general. Let's let Tuesday night me make decisions for Thursday day or Thursday morning me, so that I can take that off my plate on Thursday morning. So maybe on Sunday evening, you take 30 minutes to sit with your teen and review their schedule for the week. So you're going to go day by day through each part of their schedule or their calendar and make all the decisions for that week that you can right then and there. So if Tuesday's picture day, pick out the outfit Sunday night. Do not wait till Tuesday morning. I don't have a teen, but I was a teenage girl a while ago, and letting Tuesday morning me decide what to wear for pictures on Tuesday is a horrible idea. I guarantee that's a disaster waiting to happen. But Sunday night me could make a better decision about what's clean right now. If the thing I want to wear is not clean, do I have time to get it clean by Tuesday morning? If I loaned the article of clothing that I want to wear on Tuesday to a friend, what can I do to get it back by Tuesday? Tuesday morning, when I realize that I loaned the thing that I want to wear to a friend, it's too late to do anything about it. But Sunday night me can think a whole lot better about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday me than in the moment me can. But it also has to be dedicated time. You've got to establish the routine and the habit of really thinking about, okay, these 30 minutes at the end of Sunday have to be dedicated to consistently thinking about future me. And similarly, on a day by day case, spend the last 10 minutes of today thinking about what tomorrow me needs, and how can I best support myself to be successful. And if you're doing that, again, like we talked about previously, if you're doing that with your teen, they're hearing you talk through that process. They're watching you put your lunchbox on the counter tonight so that you remember to pack something in it tomorrow. They begin to see that these are structures and strategies that we all rely on. It's not something carved out specifically for them. It's the way we navigate and get through life. This thinking about motivation and natural and logical consequences and meaningful rewards and outcomes, this ties back to the very beginning when I talked briefly about we want to be able to, we want our kids to be successful. Of course, we want them to experience success in every parts of their day. And sometimes the best way to to ensure that that success comes is to send them out the door without their soccer cleats for today's practice. When they realize that they have got to figure out a way with your support and your structure and your prompts and fading and things like that to be successful, that's a really rock solid learning opportunity. It's hard. I get it. My administrative assistant who works here with me has a teenage daughter that just went off to college this year. And she's really had to make some concerted efforts around letting her walk into a situation that she's not prepared for because she made choices that did not set herself up for success. And it's painfully hard. I can't imagine what it feels like to know that your kiddo's going to fail in some way. But when that happens, it's a really good opportunity after the fact. Let the upset and the frustration and the anger and the rage and whatever, let that simmer. Don't try to solve the problem in the problem. Give it some time. And then talk about what are the structures that we could have put in place that would have helped you have that soccer uniform ready to go for today's game. The more, and again, not a mom, so I understand, but the more we rescue and the more we save them from these situations, the less they're learning how to become independent and really develop ownership over their own outcomes, which ultimately is where we want to set them up for success so that we can send them out into the world and they can do what they need to do for themselves. I'm going to jump through a couple slides pretty quickly. I think I've only got two real slides left. And we've already honed in on this anyway. Practice with them. Independence doesn't start with just go do it. It starts with co-doing it. So break down a task into micro steps and walk through those steps with them together. As they become more and more successful with each little step in the routine, begin to step back and observe the process instead of being actively engaged in it, and then begin to exit the process and let them take ownership and take over getting through a particular part of the daytime routine. But always plan for part of that structure, support, fade cycle to be you providing support for them to be successful and then moving away as they demonstrate that they're better able to remember all the steps of a complex routine or check in with their checklist or their Todoist app or their schedule on their phone or their calendar or wherever. Practice with them. It's not enough just to put the structure in place. We have to provide the support for them to use it as well. And then really think, the last thing I want to kind of hone in on is I think it's also really important to give our teens, and especially by tween and teen age, it's really important to start to give them language to be able to talk about their experience without judgment. And so when we can use terms like our brain GPS or the brain boss that manages tasks and we can say, yeah, my brain GPS glitched today. What are the strategies and the structures that I know that I can rely on to get back on track? I mean, there are times in my day where I catch myself telling myself I'm going to get something done, and maybe I get it done before I find a chance to write it down. It doesn't happen very often. If I tell myself a verb, I've made a commitment to myself to go write that thing down pretty darn quickly. Otherwise, I'm likely to lose it and it's not going to come back. When it does happen that I don't write the thing down and I forget to do something important, if I can frame that as like my brain glitched and not I'm a failure, that feels a whole lot better to overcome and to navigate the next time. When I get into the language of all my shortcomings, the times I didn't stack up, all the times that I didn't meet expectations, and I internalize all those thoughts about how I don't measure up to the expectations set around me, that's really hard to work with and to manage. But if I had this concept of, today's a day where my brain needs extra support. If I If I say I'm going to do something, the next thing I do is write that thing down. Or if I know that I've got a particularly busy day with extra appointments and phone calls on my schedule, then I know I need to provide myself with a little bit more support to get through that day. And if I can do that without judgment and not see it as a character flaw or a deficit on my part, I'm going to set myself up for better success. And I love the idea of giving our teens the language to just notice and to identify what their experience is right now. And over time, again, and this is the of everything we've talked about, this is the hardest part for our teens to kind of take on their own. But if I can name what happened, identify a strategy to use next time, and do that without self-judgment, I'm likely to be more successful in the future. It takes a long time to develop. But I think it's really, really critical that we give our teens, especially, this non-judgment or judgment-free language to talk about what their experience is. So hopefully everything we've talked about this evening, all the structures and supports that we've honed in on, can be used as tools that help your teen develop more independence and more self-actualization. Start with strong supports. Plan to support. That is part of putting these structures in place, but also have a plan to get out over time and to fade away the amount of support that you're providing. You don't teach a kid to swim by tossing them in the deep end. You do it very systematically. And step by step. We have a few minutes for questions. I'm happy to answer any questions that have come up. Yeah, that's where I stand. That's what I got for you. I'm going to take a drink. I meant to do that a while ago. My water's been sitting there looking at me for quite some time and I forgot about it.
Well, thank you. The chat in the chat box was not questions so much, more about the teen group. So I'm sorry to take away from your talk, but hopefully parents could still learn some. You talked about what I call the launch pad, like right in the mudroom, put everything there. The backpack, the books, the lunchbox, whatever you need to get out the door, it's the launch pad. And getting things ready the night before is so helpful.
Yeah. Perfect. It looks like there's a question. Should I unmute or post in the chat? If you want to unmute, yeah.
Hi, I have a question. I have a teen. Well, he just turned 17 today. He has ADHD. He was diagnosed when he was 7 years old. So my question is, how do you help a teenager who just doesn't want to take the tips because it makes them feel like they're so different? They want to kind of do what everyone else is doing. So they don't want to use the calendars. They feel that they don't need the calendars, but then they do need the calendars. So like, what kind of motivation tips can you give those teenagers to actually use the tools that they're given, whether it's a planner, whether it's their phone, or just, is there any type of advice for that?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think a lot of times teens think they know things, right? So I think it's easy for a teen to come home and be like, my friends don't do that. Their friends might do that, and they may not know that their friends are doing it, because these are all supports and structures that we talked about using pretty inconspicuously at home. So it's not like they don't need to walk around with their planner checking it all day long or whatever, looking different from their I think I would kind of challenge the idea of like, there's a really good chance that some of your friends who are successful in school and in sports and in extracurricular activities might be leaning on some of these supports, and you just don't see it or you just don't know it. And so, but then I also think when we can build it as part of the cultural expectations at home, like this is how we do it at our house. These are the expectations that we have here. And we want to build this idea of like, it's really important that we all get on board with this. It's not just a teen with ADHD support or structure. It's like, this is the family support and structure that we're using. And I mean, also teens by nature are like pretty resistant individuals. They're gonna push back at anything that we put in place. Oftentimes, not always. Teens are gonna resist, and especially, I mean, if I think about who I was as a teenager, I was resisting any input that my mom had about how I should get things done. And so sometimes it means maybe these strategies and these ideas need to come from a coach at school, because you're not going to be eligible for the baseball team. I saw a comment in the chat about how there's lots of missing assignments and you're not going to be able to audition for the school play. So maybe the theater teacher, you recruit the support and the help of a prominent adult in your teen's life who can come in and say, no, hey, check this out. Like, look at my calendar, look at my to-do list, look at the supports that I lean, or the structures that I lean on day to day to get through my day. And these are some supports and structures that we can build to help you be successful as well. I had one more thought and I don't know where it went. Oh no. It's going to come back as soon as we log off here, and then I'm going to feel really bad. And it could extend beyond that too. And at that point, maybe it's working with an ADHD coach, or working, I think I get the question all the time from parents. I get phone calls a lot where it's like, yeah, I could teach my kid to read, but I can't teach my kid. Parents will send their kids here for the sole fact that they can't teach them. The information cannot come from mom. It's got to come from somebody different. And so I think when teens realize that what your expectations are really aren't that different from what their friends' parents' expectations are, or what their coaches' expectations are, what their leaders' expectations are, they begin to accept it a little bit better than when it just comes from mom, unfortunately. So hopefully that answered your question at least a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a complicated one here.
Between how to know when a teen is being a teen versus ADHD, I don't know. I flat out do not know the answer to that question. That is, I think all parents want their child to become independent. So is it just utilizing the 3-step support cycle you shared and hope that we won't be needed and they will function on their own? I think there's probably a little bit more intentionality behind it than like, let's just hope that this works. You want to be really intentional with providing the level of support that they need, while also recognizing that like they're disgruntled teenagers sometimes. Maybe not all the time, but at least sometimes they are. And then they've also got this CPU glitch that happens maybe all day, maybe just a couple times throughout the day. That is a lot to balance. Teenagers in and of themselves are a lot to balance. That's taking on teenagers is a lot. There's so much going on in the lives of teenagers these days. And so maybe it doesn't so much matter if the resistance or the need can be attributed to this is a teenager versus this is ADHD. The need for the support and the structure remains the same. It's there. And so I think more than anything, it's looking at how do I know how best to support today, because it's going to be different than yesterday, and learning over time where you can effectively fade away, and where you effectively have to jump in a little bit more than today than yesterday. So I hope that addresses that at least a little bit. And then
Can I say something?
yeah, yes.
You had your hand raised.
I think sometimes you have to pick and choose the battles. It's always, with parenting, probably with every stage of parenting, because you can't tell if it's the ADHD or the teen. Sometimes it's mixed together. And so, just picking and choosing what you're willing to I don't know, put up with or excuse.
Yeah. And then along with that, thank you. Yeah. Along with that too is the goal isn't perfection either. We're not along with picking and choosing the battles that we wage each day. We also have to be really willing to settle for less than what we know is perfect, or less than what we know they're capable of right now in this moment. The expectation isn't that they finish the checklist perfectly, or that they do X, Y, or Z exactly the way we think it should be done. The expectation should be, let's look at, did yesterday feel better than did today feel better than yesterday? Was I able to step away from the level of support they needed a little bit more over time? Am I able to begin handing over the independence and the accountability, the self-accountability to them instead of them relying on me. And that's not always going to look like perfection at the end of the day. That could look like a partially completed homework assignment being turned in, but turning it in is the win. Never mind that it was 75% complete instead of 100% complete. It made it into the backpack. It made it out of the backpack the next day. And they learned to independently take account for their homework assignment. And 10 years from now, developing that skill of managing something independently that's less than perfect is going to be way better than 10 years from now, having completed tonight's homework assignment 100% of the way with a fight between mom and dad and the kid and constant reminders to get the homework assignment turned in. And so thinking about developing that skill instead of every single day having to be a perfect win. I'm not familiar with this book either, but I am going to Google it because sometimes when I see things, I've heard of this author. No, I'm not familiar with the book. And Ashley, I saw your comment that said you had your teen listen, and I love that. Fantastic. I was kind of hoping that would happen.
And then, of course, I have to put a plug in for the teens who want to come and listen. The first Tuesday of the month, we talk directly to the teens, and that one's me. I give those talks.
Fantastic. Oh, cool. All right. Yeah. Anything else? I'm glad you guys stuck around for a few minutes of conversation and questions.
Thank you, guys. So watch for, there will be a newsletter. So if you're not signed up for the newsletter, sign up for the newsletters because I will send a recording and a copy of the slides. Her survey will be in that. And then automatically the survey will come from the ADHDKC site. And that asks for things that you guys want to hear about. So that's always good to get some ideas to ask for future talks.
And because I said that I'm going to send you my slides and my survey, I'm going to make myself sticky note right now because I'm about to walk out of the office. And if I don't write it down, you're not going to get my survey or my slides.
There you go.
I know how this brain CPU of mine works. It's
Yep.
stretched way too thin. So yeah, I will have those to you in the next day or so.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you. I know we ran over time. Need to get you guys out so you can get dinner or get the kids to bed or whatever you need to do. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And until next time, take care.
Thanks so much.